How is this still going on? This fight's been going for way too long. If you're blind, you can see that this is wrong. And I won't comply. Not me, no way. Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. The Freeland story is still being pumped up full of air because of the media trying to make it into something that it really, really isn't. I'm going to show you comparisons and many comparisons to other situations, again, that have happened in Canadian politics that are bigger and more impactful and a bigger deal than Miss Freeland's being yelled at by an angry Albertan. And we're going to talk about why do you think the press is focusing on one thing and not the other. I think you know why I think they are, but we'll talk about it because it's fun. UK changing the guidance for pregnant women and SADs. We're going to have to talk about sudden adult deaths because there seem to be a lot of them, and other people are waking up and talking about it a lot as well. Play guns like airsoft and BB guns are being caught up in liberal gun bans, and that's by design and ridiculous, so we'll talk about that. The price of natural gas is going up in Canada, just like everywhere else, and so is the price of milk. So yay and boo, because, you know, all of this is coming here. All of the stuff that I've been talking about is coming here, and it's very, very problematic. And the people in charge are egging it on, I suppose. So let's get into it because there's a lot to get into. First, if you want to support the show, head over to CanadaPoly.com. You can check out the forms. They're free. You can do a one-time payment or a monthly subscription. You can check out you can sign up for Kitchen Table Talks. That's coming back. You can buy my book if you're interested in that. Oh, I did that out of order. And if you want to support the show but not send me any actual money, you can click this button here if you shop on Amazon, and it will support the show. You can also check out all the links that I use to build the show at CanadaReport.co. Check out locals and all the other stuff that I do as well if you're interested in that. Okay, let's get started. Sean says, right on cue, here comes the pity train. Government exploring options to increase security for ministers after Minister Freeland is confronted in Alberta. So I said that they will use any situation they can to provoke and then use that situation that they provoked to excuse further restrictions. And in this case, the further restrictions are just a more expensive tax bill for us because we will now be on the hook for paying for security detail to separate the Liberals from their constituents as much as possible. They are not interested in hearing from their constituents, and they're not interested in doing a self-examination on why Canadians, who are typically very, very docile people, very happy people, it takes a lot to move Canadians to come and swear at ministers in Alberta. But here we're seeing that, and instead of taking any responsibility for Canadians' change in their behavior and attitudes, the Liberal government is saying, you know what we need to do? We need to use your tax dollars to buy security to keep you away from us. Thank you for your tax dollars. It's all for your safety, comrade. Right? I don't think so. I think that's a big problem, and one that shouldn't be solved with Minister Freeland getting more security. I don't think she needs it because we're in Canada after all, and if they returned to good governance, they wouldn't need protection from the citizens they're pretending to be acting on our behalf. So I think it's wild. Here's the article from Associated Press, I guess. Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino said the government is exploring all options to provide greater security to politicians after an incident when Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland was confronted in Alberta this weekend. Yep. So an excuse and more walls being built through our tax dollars to keep us away from them. Meanwhile, if a Liberal MP swears at a constituent, all they have to do is say, oh, we're real sorry, and everything is forgiven. Do you remember this situation when Adam Van Kayak, I think it's Adam Van Kayak, MP Adam Van Covenden, Van Kayak, this guy says verbally assaulted a civilian for asking not to be injected, but it was in the DMs. I remember reporting on this. They were speaking with Von Kim, whatever his name is, Van Kayak, through direct messages, and Kayak was like, F you. And the person leaked that to the press, and people were surprised. And when he got called out on it, To his credit, he admitted what he did, but has he resigned? No. He says, last week I let my emotions get the better of me and I responded in an unacceptable way to a direct message, and I regret that. I want to apologize to the person I offended with the message and anyone else who I've let down. I realize the past 2 years have been difficult for everyone, blah, 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 blah. So it's okay when a Liberal MP swears at constituents, but if a constituent swears at Chrystia Freeland, it is time to fund security. Here's Maxime Bernier getting egged after a person pretended to be a supporter and came in, got close enough to Mr. Bernier and egged him. There was no outrage when this happened. There was absolutely no pushback, no media on talking about how bad this is or how this hurts our democracy or anything to that effect. Here's Maxime Bernier being assaulted. Do you know the legal consequences this gentleman had? The person who assaulted Maxime Bernier? None, as far as I know. None. Nothing. Not arrested, not charged, nothing. Here we go.
So won't be the one ending up on his knees, bitch, please. But the only thing you can't say was came out to play.
I mean, nothing. And in fact, the Liberals encourage that kind of behavior. All of the rhetoric, all of the funding of anti-hate, and that kind of slush fund to go into people like Laith Marouf, this is being paid for and encouraged by our government. And they bear no responsibility for it. They pretend they take the moral high road. But they're thugs and liars. Okay? Here's Maxime Bernier talking specifically about what happened. He says, I can't recall any MP or media talking head expressing outrage or offering support when Antifa thugs violently attacked our supporters in 2019, when I was physically assaulted and egged last year or spent 12 hours in jail for holding an event outdoors with a dozen supporters. Right. Nobody spoke up about that. Why? Because they're encouraging it. Why? Because they wanted it to happen. Right? Here's Joe Warmington, and he's responding to Maxime Bernier. He says, Bernier says, talking head Andrew Coyne telling me how to be an adult when he and the whole political and media establishment didn't act as adults and condemn the physical assaults on me last year. Adults usually can discern manipulation, hypocrisy, and double standards. You obviously can't. And Joe Warmington says, in addition to being egged, you were handcuffed and imprisoned like a political prisoner for protesting lockdowns, and few in political media class took umbrage when it was one of the darkest moments of the dystopian pandemic era. You handled that like an adult. Few would have. Right, and there's even more examples. I talked about Skelly as well. No politicians condemned using the full force of the Toronto police force to shut down a barbecue while Costco was selling hot dogs up the street. Nobody cared about it. Everybody thought this is a useful and good use of our taxpayer dollars. I think Skelly had to even pay for all of those cops. Unbelievable. And I mean, he crowdfunded that. He got money from the crowd to do that. But that's not guaranteed. Him doing what he did was a risk, and it didn't pay off. He left. He left Ontario. He said, F this, I'm just going to go because it's not worth fighting here. It's incredible. Lion Advocacy says, how come when one woman is yelled at with obscenities and derogatory language, the entire political coalition speak out against it? But when another woman is wrongly jailed for 48 days and brought into court, degraded in shackles, the entire coalition is silent, condemn both. So here's the point on this. It's not just Maxime Bernier. It's not just people who are operating in the political arena who are being targeted, assaulted, beat up by thugs, their supporters targeted, beat up by thugs. All of that stuff is happening. But you would almost expect that because you enter the political arena knowing the challenges and risks and all of that are inherent in that. But Tamara Lich, who was a protester, who was a GoFundMe point person that turned flashpoint leader of the Freedom Convoy, was targeted by this political machine too. She wasn't seeking political office. She was just seeking to be out from under Trudeau's thumb because Trudeau is behaving like a dictator and nobody's calling him out on it. And really, people should be, right? The idea that a government is so brazenly targeting political opponents in Maxime Bernier and people who would be daring to organize a protest is very scary. And I think that we have, you and I, people who are my age, not you and I, but people who are my age, people who are in their 30s to 50s. This is our Canada. Our parents handed us a country that was free-ish. And, you know, in the 1980s, there was an argument. You could have an argument, maybe. This plan has been going on a long, long time. And I'm not necessarily blaming us, but I'm saying that blaming this age group, 30 to 50, whatever. But I'm saying that we have a responsibility to fight this fight. We have a responsibility, now that we've seen this, to deal with this. You can't have a government that operates like this. This is appalling. This is third world banana republic dictator stuff. This is not acceptable in a country that pretends to have a Charter of Rights and Freedoms. This is appalling, and we have a responsibility to respond to it, to make sure that the government understands that they work for the people, and the people are not kowtowing to the government. This is not communist China, despite the fact that Trudeau wants it to be. But it's incredible. And so we have a responsibility to respond to this. And the fact that it's happening is jaw-dropping, right? And these people are not honest people. Marco Mendicino lies on the floor of the House of Commons. The press is right on board with all of this. And instead of reporting on what's going on with regards to here's what the Trudeau people want us to focus on, Freeland. Here's where we were not allowed to talk about things, Bernier, Tamara Lich, and others. And here's the problem with that. The press isn't doing that for you. The press isn't laying that out for you. The press is reporting this. CTV News says Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino says the incident with Deputy Prime Minister Freeland was not only a threat to her, but a threat to democracy. So the press is saying, listen, if you don't believe us, if you don't believe this lying minister, because he's a lying minister, then that's a threat to democracy. No, the threat to democracy is Trudeau himself. The threat to democracy is targeting Maxime Bernier and your political opponents and putting them in jail without trial, and targeting Tamara Lich and putting her in jail without trial for garbage reasons, right? That's the problem, Marco. It's not people who have a problem with your governance. It's not people who question the liberal doctrine, right? It is you liars in government who are pushing ahead with your WEF plans that have no consideration for what Canadians want. Vivian says, again, Karina Gould, she's an MP, is appalled. Karina, does the name Laith Marouf mean anything to you? You're appalled, the world is watching, and this disgusting tolerance encouragement is attracting global attention. This matters, Karina, we're not going away. So Karina Gould said, apparently, this is August 27th. Today's the 30th, so this happened a few days ago. Appalled by the intimidation and harassment Kara Freeland was subject to Thursday, there is no place for threatening behavior against politicians of any stripe. Well, Maxime Bernier got egged, and Karina Gould wasn't appalled at that, right? Politicians of any stripe, except for Maxime Bernier. Joe Blow says Canadian pastors were handcuffed and thrown in jail for trying to hold church service. The establishment tells us that that was just fine, but we should be outraged and hysterical because someone yelled at a politician. So if Chrystia Freeland wants to be a strong woman finance minister, strong woman deputy prime minister, crying to the press if she gets yelled at, and or having the press go on a 36 hour, one past the freckle, 36-hour spree of it's so not fair, while pointedly ignoring all of the other BS that they've ignored for the last year, that's not going to fly. People don't want a weakling politician who's afraid of the constituents, and when the constituents say, you're very bad at your job, F you, you traitor, because you're so bad at your job, the Chinese and or enemies of Canada may as well hire you because you're doing damage to the country that they could only dream of. That's how this is articulated. When you hear that as a politician and you think to yourself, I need security against that guy, you're doing a bad job. And there's absolutely no returning to confidence for the public. I have no confidence that Chrystia Freeland could focus on her job rather than I'm a woman and these people are being mean to me and therefore I should have some special treatment. No, sorry, man. We're all done with that. Like, I want competence, not people who are looking for handouts and special treatment. And confidence in this government, that evaporated 2 elections ago. So I don't know why they're still here, but they're playing that game very well. Harper seemed to play that game very well too, till he lost to Trudeau. Unbelievable. Dean says, let's get into a bit of governance. Dean says, there was no parties at Trudeau's mansion during the pandemic, right? Or $8,000 a month of groceries was eaten by 2 adults and 3 children. Which one was it? So from March 2021 to September 2021, the average monthly cost on groceries and dining for the Prime Minister's household reached $7,861. That's average. No parties there, though. Normal. It's a normal grocery bill for the Prime Minister and a family of 5. Yep. Yukon Strong again says, I saw real Andy Lee's discovered Polera, the polling firm who sent a biased anger index poll to the Toronto Star today, is in fact Privy Council funded. This is more press being funded by politicians, but this is a poll. And yesterday, this poll was talking about how the Freedom Convoy made Canadians more angry than freezing bank accounts, or something to that effect. I laughed at it because it was so ridiculous. Anyway, Privy Council funded. Yukon Strong dug a bit further. Polera staff has direct ties to the Liberal Party and to Trudeau's office directly. So, I mean, I'm not surprised by any of this, but you may be, right? I don't know. 1, the data was funded directly by the Privy Council. 2, it was sent to the far-left media directly, Toronto Star's far-left media. 3, the truckers and poll demonizers were in Ottawa protesting against the number 1 and number 2 anger indexes. Abusive COVID response leading to human rights violations, inflation, and criminal energy prices. We need to consider what's going on here. Not only is Trudeau funding state propaganda, but the research behind it. Trudeau's office is directly funding polling research headed by former Liberal staffers to supply biased data to leak to state-funded left-wing media outlets. Ouch. Yeah, so I wasn't gonna go to the Toronto Star article, but I want to show you the top 2. Oh, okay. Is it there? Yeah, it is there. I want to show you the top 2 anger index and how it breaks down because it's just funny. I saw it yesterday in a tweet and I thought it was funny, but I didn't save the tweet, so hold on. Here it is. Rage is all the rage, a new poll suggests. Polera Strategic Insights has launched a new monthly rage index. Yeah, right. To gauge public opinion on Canadians' views about government, the economy, and current events. In its inaugural survey, the firm found 83% of respondents felt angry about the inflation rate and 79% about gas prices. So the convoy was partially about these things. Nearly 2/3, 64%, are still vexed over last winter's so-called Freedom Convoy protest that occupied downtown Ottawa for 3 weeks and illegally blockaded the Ambassador Bridge linking Windsor to Detroit. Well, those 2 things were different. Those were not associated, and the Toronto Star should know that. So they've been told to tie these 2 things together. And I love the use of the quotes and so-called. It was a freedom convoy in name and action, and there's no so-called. That's what they called themselves. There's no so-called about it. It's very, very interesting, the use of the media in this case to redefine a situation and put it the way they want it. Here's a video. It's about 26 seconds of Justin Trudeau getting accosted and attacked by a flag. Somebody made a meme where the flag goes in front of his face and then he pulls it off and he's got his black face on. I was trying to find it, but I did not save it. So anyway, that's our idiot Prime Minister. Somebody said to me yesterday, and I think this fits. Well done. Thank you very much. It was on Twitter or something to that effect. They said that communists promote people who are who are idiotic or incapable or otherwise not quite up to snuff, because those people are the most loyal because they'd never get that position if they weren't being propped up by a support team and communists to take over, Canada or whatever. And I think that is absolutely, like, they put inept people in positions of power because those people would never achieve those positions without them. And so those people become more and more loyal. And every time I look at Trudeau, I don't think to myself, this person's right on the edge of being like an amazing thinker. And he's right there. He's so full of potential. It seems like he's trying to get his rehearsed lines out, right? Like, and he flubs them most of the time. So he's a bad actor playing the role of Prime Minister. for, at the behest of, the WEF, I guess. Hetch Firearms says, useless crap. Most of this is already regulated. This is in response to Canadian Sporting Arms and Ammunition Association. Bill C-21 would force 50% or over 50% of Canadian airsoft and airgun businesses to close their doors for good. So you like shooting guns and shooting airsoft rifles? No more. They're going after airsoft. They're going after everything. And the reason, I think, works really well with the communist theory. For real. Think about it. Ryan says, this is about travel. This is, again, managing information, paying people for false reviews. If you do this on Apple, say you own a product like an app on the Apple App Store or on Amazon App Store or something like that. And if you put fake reviews, or if you own a product on Amazon for Amazon by fulfillment, FBA or whatever, and you pay somebody for fake reviews and Amazon finds out, you know what they do? They pull your app. They pull your product. They say, you are not allowed to be a liar and sell your fake reviews and your crappy app or your crappy product on our thing. But this is just fine, apparently. Ryan says, the ArriveCan app continues to break review records. The people love it. 26,000 more reviews in 14 days, more total reviews than Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, Apple TV, and Disney Plus combined. It got more reviews this month than Netflix has had since it came out. Wow, more reviews this month than Netflix has had since it came out. I remember when Netflix used to have a rating out of 10 that you could rate titles out of 10, and then they removed that for a thumbs up and thumbs down. And everybody thought to themselves, what? What the heck? There were reviews, and I'm sure they've scrubbed all of those reviews since then. But it's incredible that things like that, we're watching fake reviews be pumped in and paid for by the government. And there isn't anybody capable or willing to hold them accountable. That's where we are. And I mean, I don't know how that plays out in the next 3 to 6 years, because how does that work? Oh, sorry. I thought I paused it, but I didn't. I was writing down the title. Apologies. But if the government is totally unhinged from, or knows that there's nobody capable or willing to stop the insanity that's happening, how do we stop it? Because that seems like the most important question we could be addressing. All right, let's talk about COVID, because this is another situation where there doesn't seem to be anybody willing or capable of stopping it. Brock University says, beginning Tuesday, September 6th, masks will be required in all instructional spaces, including classrooms, lecture halls, seminars, and teaching labs. Learn more about how Brock University is working to keep the campus community safe. It's not safe. Here's a quick video about, it's 5 minutes, official trailer. We'll watch about a minute of it probably, but it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. The list of grievous government mistakes and miscalculations is both endless and notorious. Catching and correcting those mistakes is one of the most important functions of an independent judiciary. The internet is giving me a hard time here. It's not wanting to play this one. So go watch that video. It is 5 minutes of people talking about sudden deaths and terrible decisions made by our government. I thought it was well done. It's worth the watch. Bushel per acre says 8-month-old dies from cardiac arrest and free healthcare doesn't show up to help, showing how free it really is. Funny how Moderna just got their vax approved for 6 months plus not too long ago. Pretty wild, right? Here's the Castanet, camloops.net. Barrier. Infant dies while no ambulance available in community. An 8-month-old baby died last week in Barrier during a period of time when there was no ambulance services available for the district. According to CTV News, Troy Clifford's president of Ambulance Paramedics of BC confirmed that a call came in on Thursday night reporting an infant in cardiac arrest. Clifford, who described the incident as a worst-case scenario, said the ambulance that would have been in Barrier area was covering a staff shortage in Kamloops, located about 45 minutes away. I'm not sure of the exact location, but I understand that they were in the vicinity of Kamloops when the call came in. That's absolutely tragic in the situation that we didn't have an ambulance available for somebody in their time of need. BCEHS said in a statement that the call is under review, but did not say how long it took for the paramedics to arrive on scene. Our deepest condolences go out to the family and community and at this heartbreaking loss, the statement read. Hearts and prayers, everyone, or thoughts and prayers. But the thing is, if you're paying for healthcare, you're paying tax dollars for healthcare, and you expect ambulance service, and your baby goes into cardiac arrest because babies go into cardiac arrest. I wonder how many instances of cardiac arrest in babies before 2020. I don't know if that's something I can look up, but I'll try. But it's an interesting situation to just treat this as if it was a 12-year-old, which would be just as tragic, a 20-year-old, again, just as tragic, a 30-year-old, right? Oh, well, you know, it's a shame that the ambulance wasn't there. Thoughts and prayers go out to the family at this terrible time, right? Like, it's hollow, it's shallow, it doesn't punch. There's absolutely no, we're going to get to the bottom of this. I can't believe there wasn't an ambulance available in this emergency time. Everybody knows why. They fired the healthcare workers. And they're not willing to hire them back, and they want to import new healthcare workers from out of the country to fix the problem that they created through their terrible policy that's, oh, by the way, led to this baby dying. Not to mention the vaccine status, which I'm very interested in finding out. Right? So there's problems here, and there's very, very serious problems. And one of the major problems is that nobody cares. One of the major problems is that the people in charge of our government are willing to ignore this pointedly and focus on Chrystia Freeland getting yelled at because people are angry with her because she's a terrible, awful, awful, awful finance minister, deputy prime minister, hobbit, I don't know. James says, someone needs to be held accountable for this. Look through the U-turn on COVID-19 vaccine advice for pregnant and breastfeeding women. Quote, no evidence to suggest it's safe, and yet government has been pushing safe and effective. Here's the link, and I've got another highlighted screenshot that highlights it better. On August 16th, the United Kingdom government removed the advice for pregnant and breastfeeding women to be vaccinated against COVID-19. So in the context of supply under Regulation 174, it is considered that sufficient reassurance of safe use of the vaccine in pregnant women cannot be provided at the present time. That's a lot of words to say it's not safe or effective. And then fast forwarding a little bit, women who are breastfeeding should also not be vaccinated. So there you go. Who's responsible? In public health in Canada, have they changed their guidance? Have they changed their instructions for pregnant people? They're still saying safe and effective. Is there anybody who will be held accountable for this or be held responsible? Here's Dr. Hodgkinson. I used to watch this guy, and he's been very outspoken, and he's an Alberta doctor. He was one of the first to speak out, actually. And he's talking about, I think it's Hodgkinson. He's talking about SADS. Here we go.
It's obviously tragic that these doctors are dying, but I would paint a much bigger picture. They happen to be doctors, but they are the canary in the coal mine. We're focusing on them because of a demographic that's easily identified. If you were to then calculate the number of Canadians who are dying in a similar circumstance, that number would be very scary indeed. And that kind of number corresponds to what we're hearing, of course, with the new commonest cause of death, at least in Alberta, which is described as SADS, Sudden Adult Death Syndrome. It's like a takeoff on SIDS, Sudden Infant Death Syndrome, which has a different cause. But sudden adult death syndrome, of which these physicians are probably examples of, is now the commonest cause of death, at least in Alberta, where I live. That means more people are dying unexpectedly with no cause than are dying from strokes and heart attacks and diabetes, for example. It's never ever happened before. When I was doing medical examiner autopsies 40 years ago, signing a death out as unknown cause was exquisitely rare. It virtually never happened. There was almost always a cause of death that could be identified at autopsy. And now, of course, we're seeing this enormous number, largely, of course, because they've not been autopsied. And that should be insisted upon.
So I think that that's a really interesting point. They're not performing autopsies. Why not? Isn't that important? If you had all of these situations happening and suddenly the most common cause of death is, we don't know, don't you think you'd want to find out? Not in Canada. There's no will to look into this. There's no one capable or willing to look into this. And that's just wild. CJ Hopkins says, Amazon.com banned my book in Germany, The Rise of the New Normal Reich. And he says it's also banned in the Netherlands. So very interesting. I haven't read this book. I just think that banning books is notable. And we are in a situation, we are participating in this situation where the government is behaving in a way that we have seen this historically, and yet still we are not acting to preserve ourselves. We are not making moves in a meaningful way to organize a counter at all, really at all. And whether that's because the propaganda is effective, that's partially it, or because people are not willing to risk themselves, again, partially it. What the result will end up being is that we are not going to be effective at responding to this. We have not been effective at responding to this, and we will continue to not be effective responding to this. And that's unfortunate. So, I don't know. Here's a video about Moderna suing Pfizer for mRNA technology between 2010 and 2016 to 18. And I just wanted to show you that the big guys can sue each other, but we can't sue them. You see how this is all working? See how some people are more equal than other people, right? Corporations are people, my friends. They have a vote, and also they have multiple lifespans, right? They transcend multiple lifespans. So while you die and all of your assets go dispersed among kids or whoever, a corporation maintains its assets and continues to get more powerful and more powerful and more powerful. And the people who represent that corporation get to ride that power, right? It's very interesting to see. It's very interesting to see. Anti-hate. I was talking about how the funding for LGBT is going to be similar to anti-hate. Well, here's Holly Doan pointing out how this anti-hate funding works. She says, this is really too bad. AntiHate.ca missed the story on Crown Indigenous Minister Mark Miller. Approval of Canadian Summer Students Grant application by Montreal group linked to anti-Semitic slurs. And she says, is it because the AntiHate.ca group receives $268,400 federal grants to fund booklet for school children that called Red's ensign flag a hate symbol? What is happening when journalists who publish spending figures and public documents are the enemy? Yeah, well, isn't that very interesting? So anti-hate funded by the Canadian government to target alt-right hate in Canada, which is just anybody who is espousing things that I talk about, basically, which is to say accountability and governance, good governance. People who do things should be on the hook for them, and they should not be on the hook for their grandparents or historical crimes. Original sins probably not good for school children. Black Lives Matter seems like a money laundering operation in real estate at this point in time, right? But all children matter, and all children should be able to access help and supports, not based on their skin color, but based on their need. These are things that I espouse, and I think that sound pretty reasonable, but apparently that's hateful according to the Anti-Hate Network. So these people are funded by the Canadian government. Meanwhile, Holly Doan is not funded by the Canadian government, and she points out that anti-hate is funded to the tune of $268 million, and she's blocked, right? I wonder why. Do you not wonder why? Yeah, well, I hope you understand why. I don't really wonder why. It seems pretty obvious that the government does not want to know about the people who know about their shenanigans, right? Catherine McKenna, former climate Barbie, current swimming Barbie, I guess. She says, is responding to Susan Mitchell And she says, the issue is, quote, our algorithms exploit the human brain's attraction to divisiveness. Facebook's researchers warned if left unchecked, Facebook would feed users more and more divisive content in an effort to gain user attention and increase time on the platform. So McKenna says the algorithm used by social media companies have the effect of amplifying hate, attacks, as well as conspiracy theories. That needs to change now. You know what amplifies hate? Spending $268,000 on hateful garbage and rhetoric from the AntiHate.ca. Also, spending $130,000 on Laith Marouf. That's pretty hateful. That needs to change now, don't you think, Catherine McKenna? Or can you not see that, right? Like, you're hyper-focused on Facebook's algorithm, which you don't understand. Can you regulate an algorithm that is not yours, does not have any kind of connection to Canada? You could maybe block Facebook. You could say Facebook's bad for you in Canada, but good luck regulating the internet. So if Facebook really is doing that, that's probably a societal conversation, not a, we need to change that now, says Catherine McKenna, and she puts on her mom head tilt. No, thanks. Thanks, Mom. We're busy. Okay, we're playing Grand Theft Auto. We know that we're not going to steal cars. Bye. See you later. Pierre Poilievre weighs in on climate change. My audience's two most favorite and hated people at the same time. Elon Musk and Pierre Poilievre together at last. Quote, says Pierre Poilievre of Elon Musk. We actually need more oil and gas, not less, said Elon Musk. The world's biggest manufacturer of electric cars knows something the Trudeau Liberals don't. Everybody knows something the Trudeau Liberals don't. Trudeau wants more oil from polluting dictatorships. I want more clean, responsible energy for Canadian paychecks. So Pierre Poilievre is using this to bolster his climate change and job creation plan. And realistically, we should be producing oil and gas to Canadians' needs and to Canadians' desired oil and gas price in order to enrich Canadians and not enrich any other country. And then after we've got our desired price at the pump and our desired refining and all of that other setup, then we start exporting to the rest of the world. We fix Europe's dependency on Russia, if that's a problem, which I don't believe that it is a problem. Regardless of that, we fix the energy issues that we can fix because we're a massive energy source and we have the labor, or we used to have the labor to do it. We have the expertise. Now we need people. So maybe have a baby boom in Canada. Hey, wouldn't that be great? We could do these things, but the government doesn't want to. I wonder why. The reason why is the WEF. That's why. WEF and climate zealots are trying to do to Canada what they've already done to Europe. Okay, here is Peter Sweden. He says, looks like it's happening. A major bank in Australia has announced that they will stop giving loans to buy fossil fuel cars under the excuse of climate change. So the bank is forcing people to buy expensive electric cars. They make more money and you get poorer. Right, and when the electricity grid is down and there's no oil and gas, or there's only oil and gas, but your darn car is not compatible. Do you have a USB C plug? No, I just have this USB mini. I can't charge my phone or my car. Man, I just have this oil and gas. There's nothing I can do with it, I guess. Sucks to be your car. Okay, the food processor says Newfoundland and Labrador are poised to become the first provinces in Canada to introduce a special tax on sugary drinks this week on September 1st. Many ways to deal with diabetes and obesity. This is not one of them. By the way, the price of milk is also going up too on September 1st across the country. You're welcome. $6 for 2 liters or 3 liters or something like that. It's ridiculous. 2 liters? Anyway, it doesn't matter. The milk situation in Canada, I've read reports recently that were talking about how the first increase this year wasn't necessary. Never mind this one. So Trudeau is just on board with the dairy cartel as Andrew Scheer was, maybe even more so. And I mean, is that possible? I thought Andrew Scheer was right in there with the dairy people. So unbelievable. Inflation as well. Gas price wizard is responding to Deborah. Deborah says, while Canadians watch with horror the 1,000% increase in energy prices expected this winter in Europe, did you say something about a massive rise in the cost of natural gas in Canada? 3-fold increase? Last summer, says Gas Price Swimmer, Henry Hub natural gas spot price ranged between $3 and $4 MMBTU. This summer, it's been between $6 to $9.50 per MMBTU. With higher carbon taxes, HST, and increasing distribution costs, consumers can expect quite the wallop. Wait until full market prices start. So that's not good, right? Like, that's the opposite of good, I think. This is Well, this is Saturday Night Live's Rob Schneider, and he's talking about the time he was watching Saturday Night Live after Trump won, and he realized that Saturday Night Live was over and it wasn't working anymore because it wasn't funny. It was just a political hack show. That's my words, not his. And I thought it was compelling because I think Rob Schneider was probably just trying to entertain people, and he didn't want to become part of a comedic indoctrination. And that's what he calls it. And I think that it's accurate. I think it's spot on. I think it's part and parcel of the machine that's working to keep people within that Overton window and keep people malleable enough to be moved with ease. When I think about, the 12 trials of Hercules are the story of the sun and moon's journey through the astrological star groups, right? The constellations. I couldn't think of star groups was what I could come up with. I can't pause it. So that's Hercules' journey. The Christmas star journey talks about Orion's belt as the three wise men moving fast during December within the sky. And now I have to pause it because I can't remember the point of my story. Hold on a second. I remember now. And people used to talk about this. People used to talk about how important it was to know where we live and to know the movements and to know the things that are happening around us. And they used to have time around the fire or whatever to explain their stories of the day. We're social creatures, right? So like, what happened to you? And if you don't tell people, they don't know what your stories of the day are. And if you don't tell people your story of the day for consecutive days, well, then they don't care. If you come in and say, holy cow, the craziest thing happened, this and this and this and this, and they don't have context for it, they don't care. And so now what we do, that's how we used to be as a social creature. We didn't have TV, right? And so we would use stories to communicate. And if you didn't have a special great story for the day, maybe you tell the story of what's happening in the sky. And in that way, you get closer to these nature, but it's not nature that I'm necessarily talking about. And now we've got these situations where you come in and you look for a story that's ready-made for you. You put it on the TV and it has nothing to do with nature. It has everything to do with satisfying you're going to watch a hero journey, which, okay, that's satisfying for humans to watch because a person leaves, gets knowledge and comes back and gives it back to the community. That's the story of the hero journey. It's a male story, by the way. Female story is Beauty and the Beast, right? Taking that savage male and molding him into a creature who you'd like or whatever. That's the female story, but the male story is the hero journey. And I'm not saying all women are going to be enthralled by Beauty and the Beast and all men are going to be enthralled by the hero story. There's a lot of crossover. But how many girls do you know who say, "Have you seen Star Wars? I love that movie," right? Like, it's not so compelling. Anyway, regardless, there are some. I'm sure there are some. But I'm not saying all. I'm saying most. And most feel more affinity to the Beauty and the Beast story. But fundamentally, right now, in our history, in human history, we have replaced our connection with each other and our connection with nature and the connection of explaining the nature to our kids in a way that is culturally agreeable, if that makes sense, right? Like you are passing it down to your kids and they'll pass it down to their kids and so on. And now we pop in the latest movie and Quentin Tarantino is telling you about history and Ridley Scott is telling you about aliens and all of these very interesting things. It's not cultural. It's not being, but it is cultural. It's become cultural, right? But we're missing out on these things that drive humanity in a way that Tarantino and Scott and Ricky Gervais and Chappelle, they don't. And Ricky Gervais and Chappelle and the movies and stuff, they hold up a mirror, maybe they hold up an image to show us how important something humans do is. Or sometimes it's just an entertaining movie that really has nothing to do with anything and you just turn it on to turn off your brain. But what's happening is we're being separated more and more from our natural ability to pass down our knowledge. And that knowledge is being entrusted to media. And the media is in control of Google and Twitter and all of these terrible tech companies. And so we're entrusting our culture in a way, have entrusted our culture in a way to these media companies that have been bought out by by zombies, by people who aren't interested or don't know what they have or know exactly what they have and know what they're getting rid of. It's a burning of Alexandria Library again, right? It's the removal of our culture at a level we don't even realize we're being stolen, we're being robbed. I think that's what's going on. It was a long way to get there. All right, that's enough of me. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. No, don't do that. Check out Speaking Moistly and all the other stuff I do. And have a wonderful, wonderful day.